Hi everyone, we're back to talk about Ulysses. Now I know that your essay is about In Memoriam, but we're going to use this poem as a microcosm to understand Ulysses and just to provide a kind of conceptual framework for what Tennyson's up to here. So let's start with Tennyson. Now you understand that the subject matter of In Memoriam, the poem that is the subject of our essay, that it is about grief, it's about loss, and about what to do with it. And it deals with a friend who died of Tennyson. His name was Arthur Henry Hallam. He was 21 when he died, in 1832 or 1833 when he passed. Tennyson was born in 1809. He was a little older than Hallam. I think Tennyson was 23 at the time. And when Hallam died, one of the first works, if not the first work that Tennyson sat down to write was Ulysses, in other words, this brief poem. Now again, he's a 24-year-old man, very capable, right? In today's world, that might be 35, but there's still a lot of energy to the youth at that time. And by the time he publishes In Memoriam, which is about Hallam, he publishes it in about 1850. Okay, I think that's the best date that we can come up with for that. And so Tennyson is 41 years old, a much more mature man, somebody who is at that point settled well into middle age. I'm 55, right? It's probably the 40 of 1850, if you will. But this poem is just a really good way of thinking about how one responds to adversity. It doesn't have to be a loss, in Tennyson's case it was, but the question remains that there are periods you go through your life where you ask yourself, well, what now? Okay, I've been through a lot of them, trust me, I won't get into that, but there are just times where you are just like, okay, how do I push forward here? What's next? And the subject matter of this poem is, of course, the heroic, mythical character of Odysseus, or Ulysses, from the Odyssey. And of course, we know in Homer's famous poem that he spends 20 years away from home, away from his wife, away from his hearth, as he navigates the seas, as he does his heroic adventures, as he fights the Trojan Wars, as he leads his men through danger and perilous rocks under, terrible storms out there, and fights the savage races, and then lies with the lotus eaters for years, and all of those things, and teaches men to be leaders of men. And then eventually, 20 years later, he has to figure out what happens when he grows old and what you do with it. And so it's this transition from one state in life to another, which is sort of what death and rebirth are like. So I'm going to read this poem to you. It's not very long, but I will tell you it's one of my favorites. I come back to it all the time. It's just something that I think about. I'm like, wow, okay. And I'll just be clear about the beginning and give you my thesis at the beginning. This is about pushing on. This is about keep fighting. It's keep on going, right? All right, here we go. It little profits that an idle king, by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees, one of my favorite lines. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that love me and alone. On shore, and when through the scuddling drifts the rainy Hyades vex the dim seas, I am become a name. For always roaming with a hungry heart, much I have seen and known. Cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honored of them all. And drunk delight of battle with my peers, far in the ringing plains of windy Troy. I am a part of all that I have met. Yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untraveled world, whose margins fade forever and ever when I move. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rush unburnished, not to shine in use, as though to breathe were life. Life piled on life were all too little, and of one to me little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things. And vile it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself, in this gray spirit yearning and desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star, beyond the utmost bound of human thought. This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor, by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine and opposed free hearts, free foreheads, you and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something before the end. Some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, the long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset, and the baths of all western stars, until I lie. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles, whom we knew. Achilles is past in the Trojan Wars. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Brilliant, right? Old age has its labor and its toil. Some of these lines should be etched in your minds if you are English majors. This is just a gift from God. It's just one of those great poems. I will drink life to the lees, right? In that protected, the leeward winds, where you're protected from the mountains or whatever source of the wind is on the opposite side of the boat. Just push and go and drink that wine and enjoy it, right? So back to the beginning, he's in port, he's at home, right? And he says, what good is it to sit here? These people who haven't been subdued yet, yes, it's a very colonial mindset, I get that, right? But there's more to it. They don't know me yet, and I'm not going to just sit here with my aged wife and get aged and be old and do nothing. I cannot rest from travel. I'm going to go live, right? I'm going to go back out there again, and I'm going to test the waters. I'm going to be with my peers, with my men. We are going through this to the end. And, of course, he mentions his son, Telemachus, who is on his own journey, but he says his work is his and mine is mine, okay? And before he heads out, he talks about his mariners and what he's looking forward to. He says, you and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something before the end. Some work of noble note may yet be done. So let's go do it, in other words, right? This is a seize the day kind of thing. We're going to push off and sitting well in order to smite the sounding furrows, right? We have to strive to seek, to find, and not yield, even though we are made weak by time and fate. So there's a 24-year-old's response here to the world after the loss of a friend, and he goes back to this mythological image of Ulysses to talk about moving forward. So you can see where his heart is at this time before he writes in memoriam, and it's kind of fun to see where his heart is at 40 once he's kind of gone through the grief. This is sort of an initial response to it, like, hell no, we're going. I love you, Arthur. I'm going to take you with me. You're one of my guys. I will carry you in my heart. And I think that reference here to his mariners is the same thing that Tennyson feels towards Hallam here. But that just gets grace notes, right? And he adds bass notes to his symphony as he ages, as you'll read in memoriam. Okay, so we'll stop there. I like to keep them under 10 minutes. I hope that helped you with understanding what's going on. As always, reach out with any questions.